Hello, my name is Ted. Welcome to the EBS PaySuite Deductions tutorial. Setting up and maintaining deductions can be a daunting experience, but PaySuite makes it easy with preloaded tables and information imported from your prior payroll system. First, you should have a thorough knowledge of how deductions are calculated in payroll and your company benefit specifics. Now, let's open the PaySuite application to get an in-depth look at the setup of deductions. When PaySuite opens, you should see a tab for Payroll. Go ahead and click on the Payroll tab now. When the Payroll tab opens, you will see a menu on the left side of the screen. Click on the Master's menu item. Now, the payroll codes will display. Select Deductions from the list of codes. The deduction screen opens with the deduction status active selected, and a list of deductions will display on the left side of the screen. Once selected, each deduction will display specific options that have been preloaded in your system. For example, select Garnishment 1. Now, under the General tab in the Deduction Category field, you will see the options that are specific to this and other deductions with similar attributes. The preloaded drop-down list includes after-tax withholdings, garnishments, other, savings plans, and Section 125 contributions. The deduction category relates to other fields on this screen and in the payroll process. As you can see here, garnishment was selected. The reporting type is next on the screen with preloaded options based on the deduction category selected in the field above. For a garnishment, the following options are available: child support, creditor garnishments, and federal levy. In this setup, child support was selected. Now let's look at a different deduction. Select insurance. In this example, insurance is part of a cafeteria plan. The deduction category is a Section 125 contribution. The employee is the sole contributor to the plan. The reporting type options are not the same as for garnishment. Instead, the options available are health savings accounts, insurance premiums, and qualified dependent care. For medical insurance, insurance premiums would be selected. The withholding cycle shows 5 weekly and 1 supplemental pay cycle options. If the deduction is withheld every payroll in the month, select the checkbox in front of each cycle. The check group is used to designate the processing schedule for this deduction. Check groups could be set up to pay salaried employees when payroll is processed for check group 1, and hourly employees when payroll is processed for check group 2. Use the withholding priority field to rank the priority of this deduction. In this example, insurance has a withholding priority of 5. If more than one deduction has the same priority, the system will rank them alphabetically. Calculation rules have been preset in the system and need only be selected to align with the deduction. For insurance, flat amount is selected. Standard amount is used to enter a flat amount deducted on a monthly basis, such as for union dues. Insurance may be a flat amount on the calculation rules, but the amount may differ depending on the level of coverage for the individual employee. At this time, it is important to note that the general attributes of the deduction are set up here in the Payroll Master screen. But for individual employee-specific information, review the Employee Setup tutorial. The start and end dates are self-explanatory, and the stub description shows the description to be printed on checks and reports. To deactivate this deduction, you can deselect the status box for active. To identify the employers for this deduction code, simply use the directional arrows to move them between the available and selected boxes. The employer used in this example is ABC and has already been selected for this deduction code. Don't forget to save your work if you added a new code or made any changes to existing codes. Now you can move on to the Wage Base tab. The Wage Base screen further defines how the wage base is determined. Since our example is a Section 125 deduction, earnings will be reduced by the deduction to determine the wage base for calculating taxes. The first 4 radio buttons under the Wage Base tab will determine how arrears should be handled in the system when there aren't enough wages to cover this deduction. Select Yes for Accumulate Arrears for this deduction if you'd like the shortage to be placed into arrears and caught up the next time the employee has enough earnings to cover. If Yes is selected for Deduct Arrears when inactive, then even if deduction is inactive, the system will go ahead and collect any arrears that may have accumulated and not been previously collected. Calculate Loan is commonly used in the tip industry when there is not enough earnings to cover the deduction. Select Yes to loan the funds and produce a negative check. In this case, collection of the shortage will come directly from the employee and not the employer. Use the directional arrows to move items from the available list to the selected box for the next 3 tabs. From the available list under the Earnings Basis tab, select all the earnings that should be included in the wage base for taxing purposes. The next tab is Pre-Tax Deductions. Select any qualifying deductions that will reduce the wage base prior to the tax calculations, such as a Section 125 deduction. The next tab is Pre-Taxes. Select all the taxing entities from the available box which recognizes the pre-tax deduction. The wage base will be reduced by the deduction prior to calculating the selected federal and state tax withholding. To continue setting up this deduction, select the next tab, Reporting. The Reporting tab defines the parameters of the deduction code for reporting purposes. Close the list on the left to display the entire screen. Use automatic allocation to allocate the deduction if you have employees working multiple jobs and your company tracks cost on that basis. The automatic auto setup radio button, Yes, should be selected if this deduction applies to all employees and should be automatically set up during the new hire and rehire process. Use auto reset balance if the deduction has a cap and should be reset. If Yes is selected, a drop-down list will display time periods ranging from weekly to annual and even includes an option for pay period. Select Yes to allow deduction ACH processing of a third-party ACH transaction, and Yes for Payee Identifier. If the Payee Identifier is not available in the drop-down list, it can be set up from the Payroll Masters menu. The status field can be used to deactivate the deduction or to set the deduction for a one-time occurrence. Simply select the appropriate option from the drop-down list. If the deduction has an associated benefit plan, see the Benefit Plans tutorial for detailed setup information. Now let's go over the final tab in the deduction setup, the General Ledger. The General Ledger tab shows the GL account numbers assigned to the deduction for reporting purposes. Begin by selecting the employer ABC from the list on the left side of the page. Since the deduction we are reviewing is insurance that is paid in full by the employee, employee payable is the only GL component required. Salaried/hourly has the override box selected, and the main account number is 2160 insurance payable. If, however, you are setting up a deduction such as a 401k contribution with an employer match, then all 3 GL components would apply and need to be defined with GL account numbers. Employee payable would be assigned 2180 pension payable. Employer payable would be assigned 2180 pension payable. And employer expense would be assigned 6540 pension expense. As you have learned in this tutorial, setting up and maintaining your deductions is an easy process when assisted by the integration of existing information and PaySuite's preloaded fields. Be sure to check out the following links to related tutorial videos for even more help: Employee Setup tutorial and Benefit Plans tutorial. See you next time!